Stop cutting your mango tree like a hedge. If you are shaping it for looks instead of fruit, you are cutting away next year's harvest with your own hands. I've been growing mangoes for years, and the single biggest yield jump I ever saw on my own farm came from one change. I stopped pruning for appearance and started pruning for light. Let me tell you about a block of trees I took over 2 seasons ago. 10-year-old trees, barely producing, and the previous farmer blamed everything except the actual problem. He blamed the soil. He blamed the weather. He blamed the variety. When I climbed into that canopy, I found the real issue in about 30 seconds. The center of every tree was a solid wall of leaves. No light was getting past the outer layer. Those trees were spending all their energy holding up branches that could never flower, because flowering wood needs direct sun, not shade. We opened the centers that season, brought the height down, and the very next harvest, those same trees more than doubled their output. Nothing magic happened. We just let sunlight back into the tree. I know the feeling if your trees are getting too tall to reach, if the branches are so dense that pests are nesting inside, or if you are simply scared to cut hard because someone told you a heavy prune will kill the tree. So you leave it alone, and every season the yield shrinks a little more while a neighboring farm pulls in, crate after crate. Your tree is not working against you. It just has no idea what you actually want from it. Left to its own instincts, a mango tree's only goal is to outgrow everything around it and get as tall as possible. It does not care about your harvest. Pruning is how you take that instinct and redirect it toward fruit instead of height. Here is what is physically happening inside an unpruned tree. Mango trees are naturally aggressive growers. Left unchecked, the interior canopy becomes dark and humid, which is exactly the environment Anthracnosa and scale insects prefer. But the bigger issue is energy. Fruiting wood needs full sun to build sugar and set flowers. Shaded wood barely flowers, and when it does, the fruit is small and underdeveloped. Your low yield is rarely about soil or fertilizer. It is almost always about light penetration. The tree is spending its resources on branches that were never going to produce anything for you. Pruning simply stops that waste and redirects the tree's energy into the wood that actually matters. Now, let's get into the method. This works across most mango varieties and most growing regions, since it is based on the tree's actual biology, not a regional trick. Timing comes first, and getting this wrong ruins everything else you do. Prune right after harvest, not before. In most growing zones, that means late summer into early fall. Never prune heavily in spring, since that is when the tree is setting its flower buds, and you will cut off the coming season's crop. Never prune hard in winter either, since fresh cuts exposed to cold stress the tree unnecessarily. Post-harvest pruning gives the tree months to heal and push new growth before it needs to flower again. Start with a clean, sharp pair of hand pruners and a good lopper for anything thicker. Wipe your blades down between trees if you are working across an orchard, since dirty tools spread disease from one tree to the next. Begin with the obvious cuts. Remove anything dead, broken, or crossing another branch. Cut back to the trunk or to a larger lateral branch. Never leave a stub, since a stub just rots and becomes an entry point for disease. Take out any branches growing straight down toward the ground, too. Those never carry fruit well and only shade the branches above them. Now step back and look at the overall shape you are working toward. You want an open center, like the inside of a vase, where sunlight can drop straight down into the middle of the canopy instead of stopping at the outer leaves. This is the entire idea behind the open center method, and it is the actual secret behind consistently high yields. Most growers avoid this because a dense, leafy tree looks healthy from the outside. It is not. Look for the vertical water sprouts shooting up through the center. Choose 3 or 4 strong scaffold branches to keep as the tree's permanent framework, and remove whatever else is competing with them in the middle. It will look bare right after. That bareness is exactly what lets the light in. Next is height. This is usually the #1 complaint I hear from other farmers. If a tree is 20 feet tall, you cannot spray it properly. You cannot harvest it without risking a fall, and most of the fruit ends up out of reach anyway. Find the tallest leader, Pick a point around 8 to 10 feet where a strong outward-facing side branch exists and cut the main leader just above that branch. That side branch becomes the new top of the tree. Always cut back to an outward-facing branch, never an inward one, since every cut tells the tree exactly where to grow next. Cut to an inward branch, and you are just rebuilding the same congested center you removed. After height, move to thinning. Even with an open center, the outer canopy can still be too dense. Look for branches running parallel to each other and doing the same job. Keep the stronger one, remove the weaker one. This is different from just shortening a branch. Thinning removes it entirely, which improves airflow and helps leaves dry faster after rain, cutting down on fungal pressure. Also remove long, spindly branches that have not fruited in years. Old, unproductive wood should go to make room for stronger new growth. A good target is removing 20 to 30% of total leaf volume in one session. Stay under 50%, or you risk shocking the tree into a surge of weak water sprouts instead of productive wood. Pay attention to your cut angle. Do not cut flush against the trunk, and do not leave a long stub. Leave the small branch collar where the limb meets the trunk, since that collar contains the tissue that seals the wound fastest. For thicker branches, use 3 cuts instead of 1. An undercut first, a top cut further out to remove the weight, then a final clean cut near the collar. This prevents the bark from tearing down the trunk as the branch falls. Once the cutting is done, clean up properly. Do not leave cut wood and leaves under the tree, since mango debris can harbor both pests and fungal spores. Bag it or burn it if local rules allow, rather than composting it unless your pile runs hot enough to kill pathogens. Now for 2 things almost nobody talks about, and they are the real net gain in this video. First, young trees need a completely different approach than mature ones. If your tree is under 3 years old, you are not renovating a canopy. You are building the framework it will carry for the next several decades. Select your 3 or 4 scaffold limbs early, while the tree is still small, spaced evenly around the trunk with wide angles rather than tight ones, since narrow crotch angles split under fruit weight later in life. Formative pruning at this stage costs you almost nothing in current yield and saves you years of corrective cutting down the road. Second, mango trees are naturally prone to alternate bearing. A heavy crop one year followed by a weak one the next. Pruning is one of the few tools that actually evens this out. In a year following a very heavy crop, prune slightly harder than usual to reduce the fruiting wood load and force the tree to rebuild strength instead of exhausting itself again the following season. Farmers who ignore this cycle wonder why their trees seem to boom and bust every other year, when the real driver is energy depletion that pruning can directly manage. If you are dealing with a completely neglected, older tree that has not been touched in years, do not try to fix it in one season. Remove no more than 1/3 of the canopy in the first year. Focus entirely on opening the center and controlling height, then finish the thinning and shaping work the following year once the tree has recovered. Trying to fully renovate a neglected tree in a single aggressive prune is the fastest way to shock it into years of unproductive regrowth. Let's recap the full method. Prune right after harvest. Remove dead, broken, and crossing wood first. Open the center to let light into the core. Bring the height down using outward-facing cuts. Thin parallel and spindly branches for airflow. Clean up all debris to break the disease cycle. Train young trees early with wide scaffold angles. Adjust pruning intensity to manage alternate bearing. And if you inherit a neglected tree, renovate it over 2 seasons, not 1. Mango trees are tough. If you cut too much this year, they recover. If you cut too little, you simply prune again next season. The only real mistake is doing nothing and watching the yield shrink year after year. Get out to your trees, look at the canopy with this method in mind, and start with the easiest cuts first. The payoff shows up in your very next harvest.